America has some of the most breathtaking destinations on the planet. It also has some places that will make you question every travel decision you've ever made. These are the 20 worst places to visit in the USA. Don't ever go there. Number 20, Gary, Indiana. If you've driven along Interstate 90 between Chicago and Indiana, you've probably passed the Gary, Indiana skyline and automatically locked your car doors. That instinct is not entirely misdirected. Gary was built on steel. U.S. Steel opened the Gary Works plant in 1906, and for decades the city thrived on industrial muscle. At its peak in the 1960s, Gary had nearly 180,000 residents. Today the population is closer to 70,000 and dropping steadily with each census. The steel industry collapsed, the jobs left, and what remained was a city that never found a viable path to recovery. The vacant building count in Gary is staggering. Block after block of abandoned homes, collapsed factories, and overgrown lots cover swaths of the city. The median household income is roughly half the national average. The violent crime rate consistently ranks among the highest in the United States for cities of its size. One travel writer who documented a visit described arriving on a Tuesday afternoon and seeing only 2 other people on foot in a 12-block stretch of downtown, both of whom asked him what he was doing there. What Gary does have is Michael Jackson's childhood home at 2300 Jackson Street, which draws a modest number of fans annually. The house itself is privately owned and not consistently open for tours. There is also a genuinely striking Art Deco City Hall building that stands as a ghost of the city's ambitions. But visiting Gary for tourism is not something most travel professionals would recommend with a straight face. Number 19, Bakersfield, California. California promises sunshine, beaches, and the kind of living that gets photographed for lifestyle magazines. Bakersfield promises 110-degree summer heat, oil derricks, and the flattest, brownest stretch of the San Joaquin Valley you can find. To be fair, Bakersfield has its defenders. It's the home of Merle Haggard and Buck Owens, genuine country music royalty. And Crystal Palace, the honky-tonk Buck Owens built in 1996 and operated until his death in 2006, remains a legitimate attraction for country music enthusiasts. But as a destination for the average traveler, the air quality in Bakersfield is among the worst in the United States. The American Lung Association consistently ranks it near the bottom of clean air rankings, with a combination of agricultural dust, vehicle emissions, and oil industry pollution creating ozone conditions that pose real health risks on significant portions of the year. The temperature extremes are brutal in both directions. There is no coastline, no major mountain access without a substantial drive, and the downtown has struggled economically for years. The kindest thing I can say about Bakersfield is that it's on the way to better places, one traveler posted in a California tourism forum, which sums up the consensus fairly accurately. Number 18, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Myrtle Beach calls itself the Grand Strand and markets itself as the East Coast's premier beach destination. What it actually is, for much of the year, is a 60-mile corridor of miniature golf courses, all-you-can-eat buffets, souvenir shops selling the same merchandise, and traffic that defies rational explanation. The beach itself is real and accessible. The water is the Atlantic Ocean. These things are true, but the experience of actually being at Myrtle Beach involves navigating infrastructure that was built to handle peak summer crowds and operates in a state of permanent chaos. The traffic on Kings Highway and Highway 17 during summer is genuinely among the worst congestion in the South. A 2-mile stretch that should take 4 minutes can take 45. Parking near the beach costs real money. The accommodations range from expensive to overpriced, with quality that often doesn't match either category. The crime statistics in certain areas of Myrtle Beach are also elevated relative to comparable beach towns. Spring break and bike week events bring enormous crowds and corresponding disorder that locals have complained about in municipal meetings for years. "Every year I tell myself I won't go back," one repeat visitor wrote. "Every year my in-laws make us go back. Every year I am right." Number 17. Newark, New Jersey. Newark suffers from a problem that is entirely geographical. It sits 12 miles from Manhattan, which means that every tourist who arrives at Newark Liberty International Airport immediately looks for the fastest train to New York and never looks back. This is understandable. Newark has struggled with crime, economic decline, and infrastructure decay for decades. The city has made genuine efforts at revitalization. The Prudential Center Arena opened in 2007. Rutgers University Newark has a campus here. And the Ironbound District has a genuinely excellent Portuguese restaurant scene that draws foodies from the tri-state area. But the broader tourist experience of Newark, the parts outside the arena and the Ironbound, involves navigating an environment that most visitors find unwelcoming and unsafe. The homicide rate per capita is among the highest in New Jersey, a state that has no shortage of cities with elevated crime. If you land at EWR and need to spend a night before continuing, stick to the airport area hotels. If you're visiting specifically for the Ironbound food scene, that's a defensible choice. Otherwise, the PATH train to Manhattan takes 24 minutes and costs about $4. Number 16. Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Pigeon Forge is the access road to one of the most visited national parks in America, Great Smoky Mountains. And it has used that geographic advantage to build one of the most relentlessly commercial tourist corridors in the country. The 5-mile strip of Pigeon Forge contains Dollywood, which is genuinely excellent and deserves its success. It also contains dozens of go-kart tracks, dinner theater shows, pancake restaurants competing for the same dollar, wax museums, escape rooms, and miniature golf courses stacked on top of each other in what can only be described as a competitive commercial ecosystem, fighting over every tourist who passes through. The traffic on the Pigeon Forge Parkway during peak season is legendary among Smokies visitors. A 5-mile drive can take an hour. The number of pancake restaurants per capita in Pigeon Forge likely exceeds any comparable statistic in the United States. If you're going to Dollywood, go to Dollywood. If you're going to the Smokies, drive through Pigeon Forge as fast as the traffic will allow, and don't stop for the Old Mill Pancake Parlor, unless you have genuine time to kill. Number 15. Atlantic City, New Jersey. Atlantic City was once the jewel of the Northeast Coast, the boardwalk empire, the beauty pageants, the genuine resort destination that inspired the Monopoly board. That city has been declining, with intermittent attempts at revival, for the better part of 40 years. The casino industry that was supposed to save Atlantic City after gambling was legalized in 1977 did provide an initial economic boost, but by the 2000s, the market had collapsed. Of the 12 casinos operating at the peak, 5 closed between 2014 and 2016 alone. The Trump Plaza, the Revel, the Atlantic Club, Showboat, and Trump Taj Mahal all shut their doors in a span of 2 years. Several of the closed buildings sat empty and deteriorating on the boardwalk for years afterward. What remains is a city where blocks of luxury casino resort sit adjacent to neighborhoods with some of the highest poverty rates in New Jersey. The boardwalk itself, which stretches for 4 miles, has sections that feel genuinely vibrant and sections that feel like you've accidentally wandered into a cautionary tale about regional economic decline. The beach, notably, is free and genuinely pleasant. The Steel Pier amusement area has some rides. Hard Rock Hotel and Casino has invested meaningfully in the property and provides a decent entertainment experience. But the surrounding city tells a complicated story that no casino marketing budget has successfully rewritten. Number 14. Branson, Missouri. Branson, Missouri bills itself as the live entertainment capital of America, and by a certain metric, it has a case, more theater seats than Broadway, dozens of performance venues, and a year-round schedule of shows that attracts millions of visitors annually. The shows, however, are primarily aimed at a very specific audience, people over the age of 65 who enjoy tribute bands, magicians, and country performers who were famous sometime between 1975 and 1995. If that describes you or your travel companion, Branson will genuinely exceed expectations. If it doesn't describe you, Branson will feel like an alternate dimension where the 1980s never ended and every restaurant serves the same buffet. The traffic in Branson during peak season rivals Pigeon for sheer inexplicability given the city's size. Highway 76, the main strip, handles traffic with the efficiency of a parking lot that occasionally moves. The commercial development along the strip has the aesthetic of a state fair that someone decided should be permanent. Branson is not the worst place on this list by any absolute measure, but it is spectacularly mismatched with what most tourists under the age of 50 are looking for, and the marketing gap between what Branson promises and what it delivers to a general audience is wide enough to generate real disappointment. Number 13, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Louisiana has New Orleans, which is one of the genuinely irreplaceable cities in America. Louisiana also has Baton Rouge, which is 2 hours away and is frequently visited by tourists who run out of New Orleans hotel availability and accept whatever they can find. Baton Rouge is the state capital and a significant college town. Louisiana State University is here, and on football Saturdays, the city transforms into something genuinely exciting. But as a travel destination on its own merits, Baton Rouge struggles. The heat and humidity in summer are extreme. The traffic is perpetually bad, with a road infrastructure that has not kept pace with growth. The petrochemical industry that dominates the industrial corridor along the Mississippi between Baton Rouge and New Orleans has earned that stretch of river the nickname Cancer Alley, a reference to the concentration of industrial facilities and the associated environmental and health concerns that have been documented by journalists, academics, and advocacy organizations for decades. Driving Highway 1 along the river offers views of refineries, tank farms, and petrochemical plants interrupted by the occasional plantation home converted to a museum. The old state capitol, the LSU campus, and the USS Kidd Naval Museum have genuine appeal. But the honest assessment of Baton Rouge as a tourist destination is that it's a city best appreciated by people who have reasons to be there rather than people who chose it. Number 12, Flint, Michigan. The Flint water crisis that began in 2014 and became a national story in 2015 and 2016, when elevated lead levels in the city's water supply were confirmed after the city switched its water source from Lake Huron to the Flint River and failed to properly treat the water, is the defining narrative of modern Flint. It is not a narrative that has been fully resolved. While significant infrastructure work has been done on Flint's water pipes since the crisis, and the EPA has declared the water safe to drink, many Flint residents continue to use bottled or filtered water out of a distrust that is entirely understandable given what happened. The crisis cost the city and state hundreds of millions of dollars in legal settlements. Before the water crisis, Flint was already a city in severe decline. The collapse of the American automotive industry hit Flint harder than almost anywhere else. The city that gave birth to General Motors in 1908 watched as plant after plant closed through the 1980s and 1990s. The population dropped from nearly 200,000 in 1960 to under 100,000 today. Flint has community institutions worth knowing about. The Flint Institute of Arts has a legitimate collection, and the city's role in labor history, including the 1936-37 sit-down strike at General Motors that was a landmark moment for American unions, is genuinely significant. But recommending Flint as a tourist destination in 2024 requires careful qualification. Number 11, Camden, New Jersey. Camden sits directly across the Delaware River from Philadelphia. On a clear day, standing in Camden, you can see the Philadelphia skyline, which is either comforting or taunting, depending on your perspective and your level of civic optimism. Camden has been on worst city lists so consistently for so long that it has almost achieved a kind of grim celebrity. For years, it held the distinction of being the most dangerous city in America by crime rate per capita. The local police department was so severely broken that the city disbanded it entirely in 2013 and replaced it with a new county-operated department, a radical and highly controversial step that generated significant national media attention and became a reference point in national conversations about police reform. The city has made some genuine progress since the police department restructuring. The crime numbers have improved meaningfully. The waterfront, which includes the BB&T Pavilion concert venue, the Adventure Aquarium, and the Battleship New Jersey Museum, has been developed into a legitimate destination that draws visitors from Philadelphia. But the broader city beyond the waterfront remains one of the most economically distressed urban environments in the Northeast. Median household incomes are a fraction of the national average. Abandoned properties are numerous. The high school graduation rate has historically been among the lowest in New Jersey. If you're in Philadelphia and want to see the Battleship New Jersey, take the ferry across. Don't wander far from the waterfront. Number 10. Fresno, California. Fresno occupies the center of California's Central Valley, a region that produces an extraordinary percentage of the country's fruits, vegetables, and nuts. Almonds, pistachios, grapes, peaches, tomatoes, and more come from the farmland that surrounds the city. The agricultural productivity of the Central Valley is genuinely remarkable and feeds much of the nation. The city of Fresno itself, however, consistently appears on lists of America's least livable cities. Air quality is among the worst in the United States year-round. The valley's geography creates a natural air basin that traps pollution, and the combination of agricultural dust, diesel emissions from farm equipment and freight traffic, and industrial sources creates some of the worst ozone and particulate matter readings in the country. The American Lung Association's annual air quality report has placed Fresno near the bottom of its rankings for years running. The heat is serious. Summer temperatures routinely exceed 100 degrees, and the urban heat island effect makes city neighborhoods significantly warmer than the surrounding farmland. Poverty rates are high. The homeless population has grown substantially. The downtown has struggled through multiple cycles of development attempts and underperformance. Fresno is an important city economically, and it functions as a regional hub for the Central Valley. It is not a recreational destination. Number 9. Lubbock, Texas. West Texas is a particular kind of landscape, flat, brown, enormous, windswept, and Lubbock is its largest city. It's also, by the numbers, one of the least visited American cities of its size. Lubbock is home to Texas Tech University, which provides the city with athletic events, cultural programming, and a young population that generates some nightlife along the strip near campus. Buddy Holly was born here in 1936, and the Buddy Holly Center Museum is a genuine pilgrimage site for rock and roll historians. But the visitor experience of Lubbock outside of football weekends and the Buddy Holly Center is limited. The wind is relentless. Lubbock regularly ranks among the windiest cities in the continental United States, and blowing dust creates conditions that are uncomfortable for outdoor activity on a significant number of days per year. The summer heat is extreme. The landscape, while dramatic in a certain West Texas way, offers none of the scenic variety that draws visitors to other parts of the state. Lubbock exists, does what it does, and mostly asks to be left alone. This is a reasonable request that tourists should generally honor. Number 8. Stockton, California. In 2012, Stockton became the largest American city to file for bankruptcy at that time. a distinction it held until Detroit filed in 2013. The bankruptcy reflected decades of fiscal mismanagement, pension obligations that outpaced revenue, and an economic base that had been hollowed out by the housing crisis. Stockton is in the San Joaquin Valley, suffering from the same air quality issues as Fresno and Bakersfield. The violent crime rate has historically placed Stockton among California's most dangerous cities. The homelessness crisis visible throughout the city adds to the overall sense of institutional stress. The city has worked to address its financial situation since emerging from bankruptcy in 2015. A universal basic income pilot program run from 2019 to 2021 attracted national attention and generated significant policy discussion. But the tourism infrastructure is essentially non-existent, and the general visitor experience of Stockton does not suggest a destination worth seeking out. Number 7. Toledo, Ohio. Ohio has legitimate destinations. Columbus has grown into a genuinely interesting city. Cleveland has the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and a revitalized lakefront. And Cincinnati has a distinct character. Toledo has the Toledo Museum of Art, which is genuinely excellent and one of the better regional art museums in the Midwest, and a Glass City designation that reflects the city's historical role in glass manufacturing. But Toledo, as a travel destination, suffers from the same deindustrialization story that affects much of the Midwest industrial belt. The manufacturing base that sustained the city through the mid-20th century contracted, and the replacement economy never fully materialized. The downtown has vacant storefronts and abandoned buildings among the still operating businesses. The waterfront along the Maumee River and the glass-enclosed Riverwalk have been development priorities, but the overall urban environment is uneven. If you're driving the Ohio Turnpike and need to stop, Toledo works fine. If you're considering Toledo as a specific travel destination, the Toledo Museum of Art, and maybe one afternoon on the riverfront, is honest about what the experience offers. Number 6. Laredo, Texas. Laredo sits on the Rio Grande at the U.S.-Mexico border and operates as one of the largest inland ports on the continent. The Port of Laredo handles an enormous volume of commercial freight crossing between the U.S. and Mexico. It is an economically important city. The visitor experience, however, is shaped by its border location in ways that are not universally appealing. The summer heat in Laredo is extreme, even by Texas standards, with July temperatures routinely exceeding 100 degrees. The city's entertainment and cultural options are limited relative to its size. The safety situation near the border crossing areas requires awareness and judgment that most casual tourists are not accustomed to navigating. The historic district around San Agustin Plaza has genuine character. The old cathedral, the plaza, and the surrounding streets give a sense of the city's long history, which predates Texas statehood. But the broader tourist infrastructure is oriented toward commercial trade rather than leisure visitors. Number 5. Detroit, Michigan. Detroit is a complicated entry on this list because it requires separating what Detroit was from what it has been and what it is actively working to become. At its lowest point, which the 2013 municipal bankruptcy crystallized dramatically, Detroit had lost more than 1 million residents from its 1950 peak of 1.85 million, left behind approximately 78,000 abandoned structures, and carried pension obligations and debt that consumed any ability to provide basic services. The bankruptcy was the largest municipal bankruptcy in American history by total debt obligations. What has happened since is genuinely interesting. The Midtown and New Center neighborhoods, anchored by Wayne State University, the Detroit Institute of Arts, and the Detroit Medical Center, have seen significant reinvestment and population return. The DIA houses one of the great art collections in America. The Diego Rivera Detroit Industry murals alone are worth a trip, and the collection of American, European, and African art rivals museums in cities 4 times Detroit's current size. The Eastern Market is a legitimate urban food market with real energy that operates Saturday mornings as one of the genuine highlights of Midwest food tourism. The Detroit music scene, rooted in Motown history and extending through punk, techno, and hip-hop, gives the city a cultural depth that cities 3 times its size would envy. But significant portions of Detroit remain genuinely distressed, and the visitor who doesn't navigate carefully can end up in neighborhoods where the conditions are stark and the infrastructure is minimal. Detroit rewards people who know what they're looking for. For casual tourists without a specific plan, the experience can be bewildering. Detroit is a great city if you know where to go, one long-term resident told a travel magazine. The problem is that nobody tells you where to go. Number 4. Tijuana adjacent, San Ysidro, California. San Ysidro is technically a neighborhood of San Diego, but it functions as the American gateway to Tijuana, the busiest land border crossing in the world by vehicle, processing tens of millions of crossings annually. As a standalone American destination, San Ysidro offers essentially nothing for tourists beyond its function as a crossing point. The physical environment of San Ysidro is shaped entirely by the crossing. The commercial strip near the port of entry is oriented toward travelers, money changers, and businesses serving cross-border needs. The residential neighborhoods are dense and economically stressed. The experience of standing in the pedestrian crossing line during peak hours, which can extend to several hours in each direction, is a defining San Ysidro experience that generates 0 positive reviews. If you're crossing into Tijuana with a clear sense of where you're going, what you want to do, and how border crossings work, that's a choice with its own rewards and risks. But San Ysidro itself is a place to pass through, not a place to visit. Number 3. Compton, California. Compton's cultural influence is enormous and globally recognized. It's the birthplace of gangsta rap, the home of NWA, and a place whose streets have been referenced in more songs than almost anywhere else in American music history. The Compton's Most Wanted legacy, Dr. Dre's formative years, and the Compton Cookout's place in the Williams sisters' tennis origin story all give the city a cultural density that vastly exceeds its physical size. The actual visit experience is different. Compton is a densely built, economically challenged city in the Los Angeles basin with very limited tourist infrastructure. The violent crime rate has historically been among Southern California's highest, though it has improved meaningfully since the 1990s. The places associated with the city's cultural legacy are largely unremarkable physical locations: streets, former recording studios, private homes, without interpretive infrastructure. The city has a small historical society and a genuine community identity that long-term residents are proud of. But for an out-of-town visitor with no specific connections to Compton, there is no established experience to have. Number 2. East St. Louis, Illinois. East St. Louis sits directly across the Mississippi River from St. Louis, Missouri, separated by the river, and divided by a state line that represents one of the sharpest contrasts in American urban geography. The Gateway Arch is visible from East St. Louis. The Arch grounds and St. Louis' revitalized Laclede's Landing are a short drive away. The distance between them and East St. Louis might as well be measured in decades. East St. Louis has been in sustained economic crisis for longer than most people have been alive. The population dropped from a peak of 82,000 in 1950 to under 20,000 today. The tax base has collapsed to the point where the city has struggled to maintain basic services, including police and fire. Infrastructure is deteriorating. Roads, water systems, and public facilities have all suffered from decades of deferred maintenance. The violent crime rate is among the highest in the United States for a city of any size. The FBI's crime statistics have placed East St. Louis at or near the top of the most dangerous cities list in multiple years. This is not a city where causal tourism is advisable. Number 1. Chester, Pennsylvania. Chester, Pennsylvania is a small city of about 33,000 people sitting on the Delaware River south of Philadelphia, and it has achieved the distinction of being ranked the most dangerous city in Pennsylvania and one of the most dangerous cities per capita in the United States with alarming regularity. The violent crime rate per 100,000 residents consistently places Chester in conversations with cities many times its size. Chester's industrial history is significant. It was a major shipbuilding center and the home of manufacturing operations that employed much of Delaware County through the mid-20th century. Sun Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company built Liberty ships here during World War II. The decline of those industries left behind a city whose tax base evaporated, whose middle class departed, and whose institutions were left to manage needs that far outstripped available resources. The poverty rate in Chester is among the highest in Pennsylvania. The school district has struggled chronically with funding and performance outcomes. The physical environment includes substantial numbers of abandoned and deteriorating properties, alongside occupied homes and businesses. Chester City Football Club, the professional soccer team now called Philadelphia Union, plays its games at Subaru Park in Chester, and the stadium has become a genuine destination that draws soccer fans from the Philadelphia metro area. That stadium and its immediate surroundings represent what Chester's waterfront could become. The broader city is still working toward that vision. There are real people building real things in Chester. The story is not over. But as a tourist destination in its current state, Chester represents everything that can go wrong when an industrial economy collapses and the support structures needed for recovery are slow to arrive. If this video gave you a more honest picture of American travel, or saved you from a road trip you would have regretted, hit the like button and subscribe. We put out new videos every week on the places, stories, and destinations that deserve a closer look.